Welcome back to the Age of Cathedrals. In our last time together, we examined some of the justifications put forth in Jean Joinville's Life of Saint Louis for the French king's status as a saint and holy martyr. Joinville insists upon Louis's bravery in suffering for the Christian cause, his moderation, his love of justice and of peace. Today we shall examine Louis's own role in becoming a saint, and the curious case of the transformation of his body into relics with miraculous powers of healing after his death. Joinville, Louis's principal biographer, emphasizes the king's piety. Louis was, of course, always praying, and he celebrated the liturgical offices of the day. He periodically visited the monasteries of the realm. He even prayed on horseback, as on his way there and back. And though Louis brought his wife Marguerite on crusade with him, and they had at least 3 of their 13 children while abroad, Louis was alleged by another biographer, William of St. Patus, to have practiced abstinence. In Joinville's account, Louis seems only to abstain, however, from talking about his wife and children. "I am telling you these things," writes Joinville, "because I had already spent 5 years with him, and never yet had I heard him speak about the queen or the children, to me or to anyone else. And it seems to me that this conduct was not becoming, to be so distant from his wife and his children." William of St. Patus recounts how Louis and Margaret managed to meet each other in the royal palace at Pontoise, despite the surveillance, the close surveillance of Louis's mother, Blanche of Castile. "The harshness of the queen," writes William, toward Queen Margaret, "was such that Queen Blanche had used all her powers to prevent her son being in his wife's company, except in the evening when he went to bed with her. The residence that both the king and Queen Margaret most liked to stay at was at Pontoise, because there the king's chamber was on an upper floor, with the queen's chamber directly below. They'd arranged things so that they would hold their conversations in a spiral staircase that led from one chamber to the other, and they had organized it so that when the ushers saw Queen Blanche coming to her son, the king's chamber, they would knock on the floor with their staffs, and the king would run to his chamber to ensure that his mother would find him there. The ushers outside Queen Margaret's chamber did the same thing when Queen Blanche was approaching, so that she would find Queen Margaret there." Louis IX was extraordinarily dedicated to the church. He demonstrated this by bringing relics from the Middle East to France, but even more so by his participation in crusade, which comes as a result of a miraculous cure of a mortal illness. It was when Louis is taken so deathly ill that one of the women attending him wanted to draw the sheet over his face, that he asked for someone, writes Joinville, to give him the cross, and they did. This taking of the cross, which signifies a commitment to crusade, is contagious. After he had taken the cross, writes his biographer, so did the king's 3 brothers, Robert, Count of Artois, Alphonse, Count of Poitiers, and Charles, Count of Anjou, who later became the King of Sicily. Louis was brave. After his father's death, he faced up to a coalition of rebellious barons. He was only 12 at the time of his coronation, and some of the most powerful barons of the realm conspired to make Philip Urepel, half-brother of Louis's father, Louis VIII, King of France. But they had not reckoned with his mother, the formidable Blanche of Castile. An assembly of barons gathered at Corbeil. They agreed that the Count of Brittany, Peter Mauclair, whose image we encountered below the south rose of Chartres Cathedral, should lead the rebellion, to see, writes Joinville, whether the Count could get the better of the Queen, who, as you have heard, was a foreigner. And they had not reckoned with divine intervention as well. God's help, as Joinville phrases it, in the person of Joinville's lord Thibaut of Champagne, who later became King of Navarre, arrived with 300 knights to save the day. As a matter of principle, the king went into battle with his men, as we see in the landing of the Crusaders at Damietta in the Middle East. To our right, writes Joinville, a good crossbow shot length away, the galley carrying the standard of Saint-Denis landed. When they had come ashore, one Saracen charged into their midst, even because he could not hold his horse or because he thought the rest of his companions would follow him. But he was cut all to pieces. When the king got word that the standard of Saint-Denis had landed, he strode quickly across the deck of his boat, and undeterred by the objections of his companion, the legate, he leapt into the sea, where the water came up to his armpits. He went with his shield at his neck, his helmet on his head, and his lance in his hand, to join his men who were on the shore. When he came to land and saw the Saracens, he asked what people these were, and was told that they were Saracens. He set his lance under his arm and his shield in front of him, and would have charged at the Saracens if the prud'hommes who were with him had allowed it. The Battle of Mansura, an attempt to move from the west, from Egypt, upon Jerusalem, which had been lost for the second time in 1244, was one of the great defeats for the French army. It was there that the king's brother, Robert of Artois, was killed, and the Knights Templar were annihilated. The king, however, acted like a hero from one of the old French epics, like a hero from the Song of Roland. In Joinville's telling of it, the Lord of Courtenay and my Lord John of Seignelay recounted to me how 6 Turks came and took the king by the bridle and were leading him away captive, when he single-handedly freed himself with the great sword blows he gave them. There is, in fact, a hint of the deeds of the battlefield being turned into poetry in the remark of the Count of Soissons. While we were there, the good Count of Soissons, writes Joinville, joked with me and said, "Seneschal, let the pack of hounds howl, for by God's coif," this was the oath we most often swore, "we'll talk this day again, you and I, in the ladies' chamber." It was in the aftermath of the Battle of Mansura and of the disease that set in the French camp that Louis was taken prisoner through the clever strategy of the Mamelukes, slaves who became Egyptian soldiers and who took control of the Egyptian forces to block the retreat of the French along the Nile Valley. Louis eventually negotiated his and his men's release. As soon as the Saracens had sworn, the king promised the emirs that he would willingly pay the 500,000 pounds for the deliverance of his people, and he would return Damietta to secure his own release, since a man of his rank should not buy his freedom with money. Louis was loyal. He not only kept his oaths, and those he swore, but he showed a steadfastness to the cause, especially the cause of crusade, that is truly remarkable. Once released from prison, he had done his duty and was free, morally, to return to France. The matter, in fact, was debated at royal council. Joinville writes, "This is what he, my Lord Guy Mauvoisin, told the king. My lord, your brothers and the great men here have considered your situation and have concluded that for your own honor and that of your kingdom, you cannot remain in this country. Out of all the knights who came in your company, you brought 2,800 to Cyprus. Not 100 remain in this city. So they advise you, my lord, to go to France and raise men and money with which you might speedily return to this country in order to avenge yourself on the enemies of God who held you in their prison." Louis, however, went against the wishes of his counselors and decided to stay as long as his men were there. "I have considered," he said, "what the barons of this land are saying, that if I leave the kingdom of Jerusalem, it will be lost, since no one will dare to stay there after I have gone. And so I have determined that I will not for any price leave the kingdom of Jerusalem to be lost, since I came to conquer and defend it. My decision is to stay for the time being."